The forest was a labyrinth of shadows and whispers, the kind of place where predators thrived. Callan Drake moved like a ghost through the trees, his boots silent against the damp earth. The moonlight filtered weakly through the canopy above, casting fractured beams that danced across his leather jacket and the silver-edged blade strapped to his thigh. His gray eyes scanned the darkness with practiced precision, every muscle coiled tight, ready to strike. He had been tracking this one for days, a rogue werewolf terrorizing the outskirts of the city. It wasn't just another hunt, it was personal. Every howl in the distance reminded him of the night he'd lost everything, his parents' screams echoing in his ears as they were torn apart by beasts like these. He clenched his jaw at the memory, forcing himself to focus. Revenge didn't wait. The trail led him deeper into the woods, where the air grew colder and heavier. The scent of blood lingered faintly on the breeze, mingling with something else. Fear. Human fear. That wasn't right. Werewolves didn't bleed like humans, and they certainly didn't cower. Something about this felt off, but he couldn't afford to second-guess himself now. Callan crept forward until he spotted her. She was huddled against the base of an ancient oak, her auburn hair tangled and matted with dirt. Her wide hazel eyes darted frantically around the clearing, searching for escape routes she wouldn't find. She looked fragile, too fragile to be what he'd expected. No claws, no fangs, no signs of transformation. Just a trembling young woman, clutching her knees to her chest, like she could disappear if she made herself small enough. "Don't move," Callan growled, stepping into the clearing. His voice cut through the stillness like a knife, low and lethal. She froze, her breath hitching audibly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she raised her head, meeting his gaze with a mixture of terror and defiance. "Please, I'm not what you think I am." Callan ignored her plea, closing the distance between them in 2 swift strides. He grabbed her arm roughly, pulling her to her feet. She stumbled, but didn't fight back, which only fueled his suspicion. If she really was innocent, why hadn't she run? Why was she out here alone in the dead of night? "I'm not a monster," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of her desperation. "I don't even know how this happened." Callan's grip tightened. "Save your lies. You're cursed. I can smell it on you." Her lips parted, trembling, and for a brief second he thought she might cry. But instead, she straightened, squaring her shoulders despite the fear written all over her face. "Fine. Kill me then. But you'll regret it when you realize I'm telling the truth." Her words gave him pause, not because he believed her, but because there was something in her tone that didn't match the profile of the creatures he hunted. There was no snarl, no challenge, just raw vulnerability. Still, he couldn't afford to let his guard down. Not yet. Before he could respond, a sharp crack echoed through the forest. Both of them turned toward the sound, hearts pounding in unison. From the shadows emerged 3 figures clad in black tactical gear, their faces obscured by masks. They moved with unnatural speed, surrounding them before Callan could react. Well, one of them drawled, raising a gun outfitted with tranquilizer darts. "Looks like we found our little runaway." Callan pushed Lily behind him instinctively, his instincts screaming danger. These weren't ordinary hunters. They were too organized, too precise. And they weren't after him. Their leader fixed Callan with a cold stare. "Hand her over, or we'll take her from your corpse." Callan's mind raced. Who were these people? What did they want with her? Whatever the answer, it meant she wasn't just some random victim of circumstance. This changed things. "No deal," he said evenly, drawing his blade. The metal gleamed menacingly in the moonlight. The attackers lunged simultaneously, forcing Callan to act fast. He slashed at the nearest one, catching him across the arm, but the other 2 were already circling, trying to flank him. Behind him, Lily let out a soft whimper, pressing herself against the tree trunk as if hoping it would swallow her whole. Callan fought with brutal efficiency, years of training kicking in as he dodged and countered each attack. But the odds were stacked against him, and he knew it. When one of them managed to land a blow to his side, sending pain shooting through his ribs, he realized they needed to get out, now. Grabbing Lily's wrist, he yanked her to her feet. "Run!" he barked, shoving her ahead of him as he fired a warning shot into the ground to buy them time. They sprinted through the forest, branches clawing at their skin and leaves crunching beneath their feet. Behind them, shouts and footsteps followed, growing louder with every passing second. Finally, they reached a narrow ravine, and Callan shoved Lily down first before leaping after her, landing hard on the rocky slope below. For a few precious moments, they lay there, gasping for air. Then Callan noticed something glinting near where the attackers had stood, a small emblem etched into a piece of fabric left behind during the chaos. It was a symbol he didn't recognize, but it sent a chill down his spine. As they caught their breath, Lily looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "Why did you save me?" she asked softly. Callan hesitated, studying her face. He didn't have an answer, not yet. But one thing was certain. Whoever she was tied to something far bigger than either of them understood. And someone powerful wanted her dead, or worse. As they prepared to move again, Callan pocketed the emblem, his mind racing with questions. Before they could leave, however, Lily suddenly doubled over, clutching her stomach. A low growl escaped her lips, and her eyes began to glow faintly golden in the dim light. "What the hell is happening to you?" Callan muttered, backing away slightly. Her panicked whisper answered him, barely audible over the sound of approaching footsteps. I think I'm changing." The ravine was quiet now, save for the distant rustle of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl. Callan crouched beside Lily, his mind racing as he watched her trembling hands clutch at her abdomen. Her breathing came in shallow gasps, and sweat beaded on her forehead despite the cool night air. Whatever this transformation was, it wasn't gentle. "Breathe," he ordered, his voice sharp but not unkind. "Focus on your breathing." "I can't. I don't know what's happening," she choked out, her voice tinged with panic. Golden light flickered faintly in her wide hazel eyes, like embers struggling to ignite. Her nails dug into the dirt beneath her palms as another wave of pain rippled through her body. Callan hesitated, torn between caution and instinct. This woman, this creature, was unpredictable, dangerous even. But something about her vulnerability reminded him too much of himself after his parents' deaths. Scared, confused, and utterly alone. He couldn't abandon her now, not when she needed help, even if helping her might cost him everything. "Look at me," he said firmly, grabbing her chin to force her gaze upward. "You're stronger than this. Fight it." For a moment, she stared at him, her lips quivering as though she wanted to argue. Then, slowly, she nodded, drawing in a shaky breath. The glow in her eyes dimmed slightly, though her muscles remained tense, coiled like springs ready to snap. Callan kept his grip steady, watching her carefully. If she lost control, he'd have no choice but to stop her, permanently. Minutes passed in agonizing silence before the tension finally began to ebb from her frame. Her breathing steadied, and the unnatural gleam in her eyes faded completely. Exhausted, she slumped forward, her head resting against his arm. For a fleeting second, neither of them moved. "You're safe," Callan muttered gruffly, pulling away as soon as the words left his mouth. He didn't do comfort, it made people weak. And weakness got you killed. Lily sat up slowly, wrapping her arms around herself as if trying to hold the pieces together. What am I?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's what we're going to find out." Callan stood abruptly, brushing dirt off his hands. "Come on. We need to keep moving." By dawn, they reached Callan's secluded cabin, a modest structure nestled deep within the woods, far from prying eyes. Inside, the air smelled faintly of pine and gunpowder, remnants of countless nights spent sharpening blades and planning hunts. Callan gestured for Lily to sit at the scarred wooden table while he rummaged through a locked cabinet, retrieving a file folder stuffed with old newspaper clippings and handwritten notes. "So talk," he said, tossing the folder onto the table. "Who are you? Why were those men chasing you?" Lily flinched at the harshness in his tone, but forced herself to meet his steely gaze. "I told you I don't know. 1 minute I'm walking home from work, and the next," she trailed off, her fingers tracing the edge of the folder nervously. "I woke up in the woods, covered in blood. My blood. I thought I'd been attacked by an animal or something, but then, well, you saw what happened back there." Callan studied her, searching for any sign of deception. Her fear seemed genuine, but so did the desperation masking it. He had learned the hard way that appearances could lie. "And you don't remember anything else?" he pressed. "No faces, no voices, nothing?" She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "Just flashes, shadows, growls, pain. That's all." Callan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. His instinct screamed that she was hiding something, yet every word she spoke rang true. It didn't make sense. Werewolves weren't supposed to feel guilt or fear. They were monsters, plain and simple. So why did she look more like prey than predator? As if sensing his doubt, Lily added softly, "If I really am one of them, then why would anyone want to protect me? Wouldn't they just kill me and get it over with?" Her question hung heavily in the air, unanswered. Instead, Callan opened the folder and slid a photograph across the table. It showed a young family smiling brightly under the sun, a stark contrast to the grim reality of their fate. "This was my family," he said flatly. "They were slaughtered by werewolves 20 years ago. Ever since, I've dedicated my life to hunting their kind, to eradicating them." Lily stared at the photo, her chest tightening. "I'm sorry," she murmured, "but I swear to you I didn't ask for this. I don't want this." Callan's jaw clenched, memories flooding back unbidden. He remembered the sound of his mother's screams, the sight of his father's lifeless body crumpled on the floor. Those images haunted him still, fueling his hatred and his resolve. Yet here he was, sitting across from someone who claimed to be different, someone who looked more human than beast. Before he could respond, a loud knock echoed through the cabin, startling them both. Callan rose instantly, his hand flying to the knife strapped to his belt. Crossing the room in 3 swift strides, he peered through the peephole. No one was there. Frowning, he opened the door cautiously, scanning the surrounding trees. A single envelope lay on the porch, its edges damp from the morning dew. Picking it up, he flipped it over to reveal a cryptic symbol stamped in red wax, the same emblem he'd found earlier. "What is it?" Lily asked nervously from behind him. Callan didn't answer. Instead, he tore open the envelope and unfolded the note inside. The message was brief, typed in bold block letters. "Stay away from Lily Harper, or face the consequences." His grip tightened on the paper, knuckles whitening. Whoever these people were, they knew her name, and they weren't messing around. "Well," Lily prompted, stepping closer. "What does it say?" Callan hesitated, debating how much to tell her. In the end, honesty won out for now. "It's a warning," he admitted, handing her the note. "They know who you are." Lily's face paled as she read the words, her hand shaking. "This doesn't make any sense. Who would send this? And why?" Callan crossed his arms, his expression grim. "That's what we're going to figure out, starting with your past." Before she could reply, a low growl rumbled outside the cabin, a sound unmistakably feral. Both of them froze, exchanging a glance filled with dread. Something, or someone was watching them. As Callan moved toward the window, rifle in hand, the growling grew louder. accompanied by the unmistakable sound of claws scraping against wood. Then, without warning, the lights flickered and died, plunging the cabin into darkness. Lily's panicked whisper cut through the silence. "Callan, I think it's here." The growl outside the cabin intensified, reverberating through the walls like a predator circling its prey. Callan's grip tightened on his rifle as he scanned the darkness beyond the window. Shadows shifted unnaturally in the moonlight, but whatever was out there remained just out of sight. "Stay behind me," he ordered over his shoulder, his voice low and commanding. Lily didn't argue. She pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure it could be heard across the room. Her hands trembled, not from fear alone, but from something deeper, primal. The same sensation that had overwhelmed her during her first transformation was creeping back, stronger this time. She clenched her fists, fighting to suppress it. Callan moved swiftly, checking every corner of the cabin before returning to the main room. "Whatever it is, it's gone for now." His tone was clipped, but there was an edge of unease beneath it. He'd faced countless werewolves before, but something about this felt different, more calculated. "We can't stay here," he said, grabbing a duffel bag and shoving supplies inside. "Pack what you need. We're leaving." Lily hesitated, glancing at the note still clutched in her hand. "What about this?" she asked, holding it up. "Who sent it? And why are they after me?" Callan paused, his jaw tightening. "That's what we're going to find out." Underscore, 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 underscore. By dawn, they were miles away, driving down a desolate highway surrounded by dense forest. The tension between them was palpable, each lost in their own thoughts. Callan kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other resting near the hilt of his knife, ready for anything. Beside him, Lily stared out the window, her reflection ghostly against the glass. "I remember something," she said, suddenly breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, hesitant. Before I woke up in the woods, I was running. Someone or something was chasing me." Callan glanced at her briefly, his brow furrowing. "Do you remember who?" She shook her head, frowning as fragments of memory surfaced. Just flashes, a man's voice shouting, trees closing in around me. Then pain, her voice trailed off, her fingers instinctively brushing the faint scar on her neck where the bite mark had healed. Callan's grip tightened on the wheel. Deliberate targeting meant someone had chosen her specifically, and whoever they weren't amateurs. That symbol on the note wasn't random either. It was a clue, one he couldn't afford to ignore. Hours later, they arrived at a secluded safe house nestled deep within the wilderness. The building was unassuming, a small cabin reinforced with steel shutters and surveillance cameras, but it served its purpose well. Inside, they found Marcus, another cursed individual Callan had worked with in the past. Marcus greeted them warily, his piercing green eyes scanning Lily with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Unlike her, he seemed more comfortable in his skin, though scars marred his arms where claws had torn through during transformations. "You didn't tell me she was fresh," Marcus remarked, nodding toward Lily. His tone wasn't cruel, but it carried an undercurrent of judgment. "She doesn't know anything yet," Callan replied curtly, "which is why we're here." Marcus sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Victor Kane's name has been floating around lately. Word is he's planning something big, something involving people like us." He gestured vaguely at himself and Lily. "If those guys chasing you are tied to him, you're in deeper trouble than you realize." Lily swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. "Who's Victor Kane?" "A monster," Marcus answered simply. "He thinks humans are inferior and wants to wipe them out using our kind. If he's targeting you, it's because you're important to his plan." Callan's expression darkened. "Important how?" Marcus shrugged. That's the million-dollar question. But trust me, if he's interested, you don't want to stick around long enough to find out. As the conversation continued, Callan excused himself to make a call. Stepping outside, he dialed a number he hadn't used in years, the direct line to his mentor, Dr. Jonathan Hayes. Hayes had trained him, funded his hunts, and taught him everything he knew about werewolves. If anyone could shed light on the symbol, it was him. But when Hayes finally picked up, his response sent a chill down Callan's spine. "The symbol belongs to Project Eclipse," Hayes admitted reluctantly. "It's a government initiative aimed at controlling supernatural threats. They've been experimenting with creating artificial werewolves." Callan's blood ran cold. "And you knew about this?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I helped fund it, Callan, for humanity's protection." Betrayal burned hot in Callan's chest, threatening to consume him. Everything he believed in, the mission, the justice he sought, had been built on lies. Before he could respond, a text notification buzzed on his phone. It was from an unknown number, containing nothing but a single photo. Lily standing outside the cabin earlier that morning, unaware she was being watched. Callan stared at the image, his mind racing. Whoever was tracking them wasn't just close, they were already steps ahead. Inside the cabin, Lily froze mid-conversation as her phone vibrated in her pocket. Pulling it out, she saw a message from an unfamiliar contact. "You can't run forever, Lily. Remember what you promised me." Her breath hitched. It was Ryan's number. The text message from Ryan lingered on Lily's phone like a venomous bite, its words sinking deeper into her mind with every passing second. She clenched the device tightly in her hand, her knuckles whitening as she tried to steady her breathing. The cabin felt suffocating now, its walls closing in around her as memories of Ryan's cruel smile and cutting words flooded back. "Lily." Callan's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. He stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable, but his eyes sharp enough to cut glass. "What's wrong?" She hesitated, torn between keeping it to herself and telling him the truth. But one look at his hardened stance reminded her that secrets only made things worse. With trembling fingers, she handed him her phone. Callan scanned the message quickly, his jaw tightening. "Ryan!" he muttered under his breath, disgust lacing his tone. "Who is he to you?" "He's," Lily faltered, hating how small her voice sounded. "He was my boyfriend before all this. But he wasn't kind." Her gaze dropped to the floor, shame burning hot in her cheeks. "I left him because I couldn't take it anymore. The control, the manipulation. And now," she trailed off, unable to finish. Callan didn't press further. Instead, he pocketed the phone and turned toward Marcus, who had been watching silently from across the room. "We need answers, and fast. If Ryan knows where we are, Victor won't be far behind." Marcus nodded grimly. "Then you'll need someone better equipped for digging up dirt than either of us." "Lucky for you, I know just the person." Hours later, they arrived at a dimly lit apartment tucked away in the city's industrial district. The air smelled faintly of burnt coffee and ozone, and the hum of computers filled the space. Behind a cluttered desk sat Naomi Vega, a wiry woman with jet black hair streaked neon blue and glasses perched precariously on her nose. Her fingers flew across multiple keyboards simultaneously, lines of code scrolling rapidly on the monitors surrounding her. "Marcus said you needed help," Naomi greeted without looking up. "Make it quick. I'm busy tracking down some shady government transactions." "This isn't a social call," Callan replied, stepping forward. "We're dealing with Project Eclipse." "Heard of it." Naomi froze mid-tap, her head snapping up. For the first time since they'd entered, she seemed genuinely surprised. "You're playing with fire if you're poking around that mess. What do you want to know?" "Everything," Callan said flatly, "and anything connected to Victor Kane." Naomi let out a low whistle, leaning back in her chair. "All right then. But fair warning, it's not pretty." As Naomi dove into her research, Callan took Lily outside to continue their training. They found an open clearing near the safe house, the forest looming ominously around them. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced eerily across the ground. "Focus," Callan instructed, pacing slowly in front of her. "Control your breathing. Feel the shift before it happens." Lily nodded, though doubt clouded her features. Every attempt so far had ended in chaos, her body rebelling against her will, claws tearing through skin too soon, too violently. Yet she knew she had no choice but to try again. Failure meant losing herself completely, or worse, becoming a weapon for Victor. Closing her eyes, she focused on the rhythm of her heartbeat, trying to quiet the storm raging inside her. Slowly, the familiar heat began to build beneath her skin, spreading outward like wildfire. She gritted her teeth, fighting to maintain control even as her bones shifted and her muscles contorted. But something went wrong. A sudden surge of power overwhelmed her, and before she could stop it, her claws slashed out instinctively. Callan barely had time to react, raising his arm just in time to block the blow, but not before her claws grazed his forearm, drawing blood. They both froze, staring at the wound in stunned silence. "I'm sorry," Lily whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't mean to. I couldn't." "It's fine," Callan interrupted, though his voice betrayed the tension simmering beneath the surface. He pressed a hand to the injury, wincing slightly. "Just focus next time." Lily shook her head, guilt twisting her stomach into knots. "No, it's not fine. You've done nothing but protect me, and I keep screwing everything up. Maybe you should just leave me behind." Callan's expression softened, though only slightly. "If I wanted to leave you behind, I would have done it already. You think I stick around because I enjoy babysitting." Despite herself, Lily managed a weak laugh. Maybe a little. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of unspoken emotions hanging heavy between them. Then Callan sighed, breaking the silence. "Look, we don't have time for self-pity. Either you learn to control this or Victor wins. End of story." Before she could respond, a loud crash echoed from the direction of the safe house. Both of them turned sharply, adrenaline spiking instantly. Inside, Marcus was pinned to the wall by two armed operatives wearing black tactical gear. Naomi sat frozen at her desk, her hands raised in surrender as a third operative rifled through her files. "Well, well," one of the intruders sneered, spotting Callan and Lily in the doorway. "Looks like we hit the jackpot." Callan stepped protectively in front of Lily, his knife already in hand. "Who sent you?" The leader smirked, gesturing to the emblem emblazoned on their uniforms, the same symbol from the note. "Dr. Evelyn Cross sends her regards. She's very interested in meeting your friend here." Lily instinctively backed closer to Callan, her heart hammering in her chest. This was exactly what she feared, being dragged back into the nightmare she'd tried so hard to escape. Callan's voice was cold steel. "Over my dead body." The leader chuckled darkly. "That can be arranged." As the operatives lunged forward, weapons drawn, Lily felt the heat building inside her once more. This time, however, it wasn't fear driving the transformation. It was anger. Pure, unrelenting rage. Her claws extended fully, and her golden eyes locked onto the nearest threat. Callan glanced over his shoulder, his voice barely audible above the chaos. "Don't lose yourself, Lily. Not now." But as the first operative charged, her instincts took over, and she struck without hesitation. The fight erupted with brutal precision. Lily's claws slashed through the air, catching one of the operatives off guard and sending him stumbling backward. Her golden eyes burned with a ferocity that startled even herself, a mix of fear, anger, and desperation fueling every move she made. Callan fought alongside her, his knife flashing in the dim light as he took down another attacker with ruthless efficiency. But for every enemy they felled, 2 more seemed to take their place. The safe house was quickly turning into a war zone. Furniture overturned, glass shattered, and the acrid smell of blood filling the air. Marcus shouted warnings from where he'd been pinned, his voice strained but steady despite his predicament. "Naomi, get out!" Callan barked over his shoulder, deflecting a strike aimed at his neck. "Take Marcus and go." Naomi hesitated, torn between loyalty and survival. But when one of the operatives lunged toward her again, she grabbed a nearby laptop and bolted for the door, dragging Marcus with her. "We'll regroup later," she called back, disappearing into the night. Callan and Lily exchanged a glance, wordless understanding passing between them. They couldn't stay here, not with Victor's agents closing in. Without hesitation, Callan grabbed Lily's wrist and pulled her toward the exit, dodging blows as they went. Behind them, shouts echoed through the chaos, promising pursuit. Once outside, they sprinted into the dense forest, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The adrenaline coursing through Lily's veins kept her moving, though her body screamed in protest. She didn't dare look back. She couldn't afford to lose focus now. When they finally reached a secluded clearing far from the safe house, Callan stopped abruptly, his chest heaving. "We need answers," he growled, pacing like a caged animal. "And we're not getting them running blind." Lily nodded, still trembling from the aftermath of the fight. "What do you want me to do?" Callan turned to face her, his expression hardening. "Stay hidden. Let me handle this. Underscore, 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 underscore. Hours later, under the cover of darkness, Callan infiltrated the lab connected to Project Eclipse. The facility was a fortress of cold steel and flickering fluorescent lights, its sterile corridors lined with reinforced doors marked with cryptic symbols. He moved silently, his years of training keeping him invisible as he navigated deeper into the labyrinthine structure. What he found inside chilled him to the bone. Rows upon rows of containment cells stretched before him, each holding a figure writhing in agony. People transformed into grotesque hybrids of human and beast. Their anguished cries echoed through the halls, a haunting symphony of suffering. Some begged for release. Others snarled and clawed at their restraints, their humanity all but erased. Callan's stomach churned, but he forced himself to press on. He had to see it, the truth behind the lies. Finally, he reached the central chamber, where monitors displayed endless streams of data and video feeds of the experiments. Standing in the middle of the room was Dr. Jonathan Hayes, his mentor, the man who had trained him, funded his hunts, and shaped everything he believed about justice. "Callan," Hayes said calmly, turning to face him. There was no surprise in his voice, only resignation. "I wondered when you'd show up." Callan's hand tightened around the hilt of his knife. "You knew. All this time. You knew about the labs, the experiments, the people being tortured, and you never said a word." Hayes sighed, removing his glasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. "It's not what you think. These experiments, they're meant to control werewolves, to protect humanity from the threat they pose. If we can create artificial werewolves loyal to us, we can end the war before it begins. By turning innocent people into monsters." Callan snapped, his voice shaking with barely contained fury. "This isn't protection, it's barbaric." "It's necessary," Hayes insisted, his tone firm. "You've seen what they're capable of, what they've done to your family, to countless others. Would you rather let them win?" Callan stared at him, betrayal burning hot in his chest. Everything he'd built his life on, the mission, the revenge, the hatred, it was all built on a foundation of lies. For the first time, he questioned whether he'd been fighting for justice or simply perpetuating the cycle of violence. "I won't let you justify this," he said finally, lowering his weapon. Killing Hayes wouldn't solve anything. Not anymore. As if sensing his decision, Hayes stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. Then stop me yourself. Dismantle the operation. But don't pretend you can fix this without making sacrifices. Before Callan could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed overhead, bathing the room in an ominous glow. Footsteps thundered in the distance, growing louder with every passing second. Victor Kane's agents were here. Underscore. Meanwhile, Lily sat alone in the forest, her mind racing with guilt and doubt. Ryan's message replayed endlessly in her head, his words twisting like a knife in her gut. Remember what you promised me. Promised? She hadn't promised him anything, not willingly anyway. Yet the memory of that night lingered, fragmented but undeniable. A deal made in desperation, sealed with a kiss she wished she could forget. Her phone buzzed again, pulling her back to the present. Another message from Ryan. You belong to me, Lily. Don't make me come find you. She clenched her fists, tears streaming down her face. How could she ever deserve Callan's trust when she couldn't even trust herself? Every instinct told her to run, to disappear before she dragged him further into danger. But the thought of leaving him behind felt like tearing out her own heart. A twig snapped nearby, snapping her out of her thoughts. She spun around, her claws extending instinctively as fear surged through her veins. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice trembling. No answer came, only the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Underscore. Back at the lab, Callan barely escaped the swarm of agents flooding the facility. He slipped into the shadows just as they breached the central chamber, narrowly avoiding capture. His mind raced as he retraced his steps, searching for a way out. He needed to warn Lily, to expose the truth, but first he had to survive. When he finally emerged from the compound, battered but alive, he found Lily waiting anxiously near their rendezvous point. Her relief at seeing him quickly turned to concern as she noticed the blood staining his shirt and the haunted look in his eyes. "What happened?" she asked softly, reaching for him. Callan hesitated, then pulled her into a tight embrace. "Everything we thought we knew, it's wrong. Worse than we imagined." Before he could elaborate, the sound of engines roared in the distance. Headlights pierced through the trees, illuminating the clearing where they stood. "They're here," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. Callan cursed under his breath, grabbing her hand. "Run." As they fled into the darkness, one of the pursuing vehicles screeched to a halt, and a familiar figure stepped out. Ryan Carter. His lips curled into a cruel smile as he raised his gun, aiming directly at Lily. "You shouldn't have left me," he sneered, pulling the trigger. The bullet tore through the night air, missing Lily by inches as she dove behind a fallen tree. Callan returned fire instinctively, his shots forcing Ryan to take cover behind his vehicle. The headlights cast eerie shadows across the clearing, illuminating the chaos unfolding around them. "Stay down!" Callan barked, reloading his gun with practiced efficiency. His voice was sharp, but there was an edge of desperation beneath it, fear for her safety that he couldn't fully mask. Lily pressed herself flat against the damp earth, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. She wanted to fight back, to help, but her body refused to obey. Instead, she focused on controlling the heat building inside her, the primal urge to transform and lash out. Now wasn't the time. Not yet. Ryan's laughter echoed through the trees, mocking and cruel. "You can't run forever, sweetheart," he called, his tone dripping with venom. "Victor wants you alive, but he didn't say anything about keeping you pretty. Callan gritted his teeth, firing another round before grabbing Lily's arm. We need to move. Now. They bolted into the forest, weaving between trees as shots rang out behind them. The pursuit was relentless, Ryan shouting orders to unseen accomplices who fanned out to cut off their escape routes. Every step felt heavier than the last, exhaustion clawing at their heels like a predator closing in. Finally, they reached a narrow ravine where the underbrush grew thick enough to provide some semblance of cover. Callan dropped to one knee, scanning the area while catching his breath. "We'll lose them here," he muttered, more to himself than to Lily. "But we can't stay long." Lily nodded, though her mind was elsewhere. Memories flickered unbidden in her thoughts. Fragments of a night she'd tried so hard to forget. Shadows moving too quickly, golden eyes glowing in the darkness, the searing pain of teeth sinking into her flesh. And then, Victor Kane's face looming over her like a nightmare made real. "He bit me," she whispered suddenly, her voice trembling. "Victor, he did this to me." Callan froze, turning to look at her. "What?" "I remember now," she continued, her hand shaking as she gripped her knees. "He chased me through the woods. I thought I was running from a monster, but it was him all along. He chose me for something." Callan's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. "What could he possibly want with you?" Before she could answer, a new wave of memories surfaced, this time clearer, sharper. A lab coat-clad figure leaning over her unconscious form, drawing vials of blood. Murmured voices discussing antibodies, immunity, and activation sequences. Her blood wasn't just cursed. It held the key to unleashing, or stopping, a deadly plague. "I'm part of his plan," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "My blood, it can activate the virus, or stop it." Callan stared at her, processing the weight of her words. If what she said was true, then everything Victor had done, targeting her, sending operatives after her, it all made sense. She wasn't just a victim. She was a weapon, a pawn in a game far bigger than either of them understood. "We'll figure this out," he said firmly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Together." But even as he spoke, doubt lingered in his eyes. Not about her, but about himself. Could he protect her when the stakes were this high? Or would his own demons get in the way? Their journey led them deeper into the wilderness, where they reunited with Naomi and Marcus. The hacker had managed to decrypt files stolen from the lab, uncovering critical information about Victor's plans. According to the documents, the plague was designed to target both humans and werewolves indiscriminately, wiping out entire populations unless countered by a specific antibody found only in Lily's blood. "It's genius and horrifying," Naomi explained, scrolling through pages of data on her laptop. "If Victor activates the virus, he'll have the power to control who lives and dies. And if he gets his hands on you—" She glanced at Lily, hesitating. "Well, let's just hope it doesn't come to that." Lily wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders. "Why me?" she asked softly, almost to herself. "Why does everyone seem to think I'm special?" "You are," Marcus interjected, his tone surprisingly gentle. "Not because of what you can do, but because of how you handle it. Most people would have broken by now. You haven't." His words should have comforted her, but instead they only deepened her guilt. How could anyone see strength in her when all she felt was fear? As the group strategized their next move, tensions began to rise, not least between Callan and Marcus. The older man's protective demeanor toward Lily grated on Callan, stirring feelings of jealousy he hadn't expected. When Marcus offered to train Lily further, Callan snapped. "She doesn't need your help," he growled, stepping between them. "I've got it covered." Marcus raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "Relax, Drake. I'm not trying to steal your girl, just making sure she survives." I don't need babysitters, Lily added, frustration creeping into her voice. I need answers. Callan opened his mouth to argue, but stopped himself, exhaling sharply instead. This wasn't the time or place for territorial disputes. Still, the tension simmered beneath the surface, unresolved. Later that evening, as the others rested, Lily wandered away from camp, seeking solitude. She sat by a small stream, staring at her reflection in the water. Her hazel eyes seemed darker somehow, haunted by truths she wished she could unlearn. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, startling her. Heart racing. She pulled it out and saw a number she didn't recognize, but knew instantly who it belonged to. Victor Kane. Her finger hovered over the reject button, but curiosity won out. Taking a shaky breath, she answered. Well, well. Victor's smooth voice purred through the line. It seems my little experiment has been quite resourceful. What do you want from me? She demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. Simple, he replied. Your cooperation. Surrender yourself willingly, and I'll grant you freedom. Refuse, and, well, let's just say things will become unpleasant for your friends. Lily swallowed hard, glancing back toward the campfire where Callan sat sharpening his knife. The image of him protecting her, fighting for her, flashed through her mind. Could she really put him and everyone else at risk just to save herself? I won't give you what you want, she said finally, her voice firm despite the tremor threatening to break it. Victor chuckled, low and menacing. Brave words, but bravery won't save them. Before Lily could respond, a rustling sound came from the trees behind her. She spun around, her claws extending instinctively as a figure emerged from the shadows. Ryan Carter, his eyes gleaming with malice. You shouldn't have hung up on him, Ryan sneered, taking a step closer. Now he's coming for you. The forest was eerily silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves stirred by a restless breeze. Lily stood in the clearing, her breath visible in the cold night air as she practiced controlling her transformations. Her claws extended and retracted rhythmically, each movement deliberate, precise, a stark contrast to the chaos that had once consumed her. Across from her, Callan watched with an intensity that bordered on obsession, his gray eyes tracking every shift in her stance, every flicker of emotion across her face. You're getting better, he said, finally breaking the silence. His voice was low, almost hesitant, but there was no mistaking the pride beneath it. Lily glanced at him, her lips curving into a faint smile despite the weight pressing down on her chest. Better isn't good enough. Not if we're walking straight into Victor's fortress. Callan stepped closer, closing the distance between them until their shoulders nearly touched. You're stronger than you think. Stronger than any of us gave you credit for. He paused, his gaze softening. Stronger than me. The admission hung heavy in the air, raw and unfiltered. For a moment, neither spoke, the tension between them palpable yet fragile. A thread stretched taut, ready to snap under the slightest pressure. But this wasn't the time or place for confessions, not when death loomed just beyond the horizon. Let's focus on the plan, Lily murmured, turning away before her emotions could betray her. She couldn't afford distractions, not now. By dawn, the group had regrouped in a hidden bunker nestled deep within the mountains. Naomi worked tirelessly at her laptop, mapping out Victor's fortress, while Marcus drilled Lily and Callan on combat techniques. The atmosphere was tense, charged with anticipation and dread. Every word spoken carried the weight of finality. Every action taken felt like a step toward either salvation or ruin. Victor's stronghold is heavily fortified, Naomi explained, pulling up a satellite image on one of her monitors. Multiple entry points, but most are traps. Our best bet is through the underground tunnels, less guarded, though still risky. Callan studied the map intently, his brow furrowed. And Dr. Evelyn? Any sign of her? Naomi nodded grimly. She's already inside. Intel suggests she's trying to negotiate with Victor, salvage what's left of her experiments before everything goes sideways. She won't succeed, Marcus interjected, his tone bitter. Victor doesn't strike deals. He takes what he wants. Lily clenched her fists, guilt gnawing at her insides. If only she'd been stronger, if only she hadn't let Victor bite her, none of this would have happened. We can't let her fail, she said suddenly, her voice firm despite the tremor threatening to break it. If she falls, so does whatever chance we have of stopping the plague. Callan placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. Then we stop him. Together. Training intensified over the next 2 days, pushing Lily to her limits and beyond. She sparred with Marcus, learning to channel her strength without losing control. Each session left her battered but determined, the fear that had once paralyzed her slowly giving way to resolve. By the end, even Marcus grudgingly admitted she was ready, or as ready as anyone could be for what lay ahead. As they prepared to leave, Callan pulled Lily aside, his expression unreadable but his eyes burning with something she couldn't quite name. If things go south, he began, his voice rough with emotion, I need you to know. Don't, Lily interrupted, shaking her head. Don't say goodbye. We're not doing that. Not yet. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, the unspoken words hanging between them like a fragile thread. Then Callan nodded, his jaw tightening as he turned away. Whatever he'd wanted to say would have to wait. The journey to Victor's fortress was fraught with peril. They traveled under cover of darkness, weaving through dense forests and jagged cliffs until they reached the mouth of the underground tunnels. The air grew colder the deeper they ventured, the scent of damp earth and decay filling their lungs. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound echoed unnaturally loud. This is it, Naomi whispered, consulting her tablet one last time. From here, it's a straight shot to the main chamber. But before they could proceed further, a deafening explosion rocked the tunnel, sending debris cascading down around them. Chaos erupted instantly, shouts, gunfire, the snarls of werewolves closing in from all sides. Victor's agents swarmed them, their movements swift and coordinated, cutting off escape routes and separating the group. Callan fought fiercely, his knife flashing in the dim light as he took down attacker after attacker. But for every enemy he felled, 2 more seemed to take their place. Beside him, Lily unleashed her claws, her golden eyes blazing with fury as she tore through those who dared approach. Yet even their combined efforts weren't enough to hold back the tide. One by one, their allies fell. Marcus went down first, tackled by a pair of operatives and dragged away before anyone could intervene. Naomi screamed as she was disarmed, her laptop crushed underfoot as she was forced to her knees. Only Callan and Lily remained standing, surrounded on all sides. We're outnumbered, Callan growled, his voice tight with frustration. Fall back. But it was too late. A figure emerged from the shadows, flanked by armed guards, Dr. Evelyn Cross. Her expression was cold, calculating, her eyes gleaming with triumph as she raised a tranquilizer gun aimed directly at Lily. I'm sorry, Evelyn said coolly, her finger tightening on the trigger. But sacrifices must be made. Before Lily could react, the dart struck her arm, the sedative taking effect almost instantly. Her vision blurred, her legs buckling beneath her as she collapsed into Callan's arms. No, Callan shouted, cradling her limp body protectively. His rage burned hotter than ever, but he was outnumbered, outgunned. There was nothing he could do but watch helplessly as Victor's men closed in. As darkness claimed her, Lily heard Evelyn's voice echoing faintly in her ears. He's waiting for you, my dear. And trust me, you won't want to keep him waiting. Lily awoke to the sound of dripping water and the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Her head throbbed, her limbs heavy with the lingering effects of the sedative. Blinking against the harsh brightness, she realized she was in a cold, sterile cell, a steel cage designed to hold creatures far more dangerous than her. Panic surged through her veins as fragmented memories returned. Evelyn's betrayal, Callan's anguished shout, the tranquilizer dart piercing her skin. "Callan!" she whispered hoarsely, pushing herself upright. The movement sent fresh waves of dizziness crashing over her, but she forced herself to focus. Where was he? Were the others safe? Her question was answered moments later when the door creaked open, revealing Ryan Carter. His presence alone made her stomach churn, his smirk twisting into something darker, crueler than she remembered. He leaned casually against the frame, arms crossed, his green eyes gleaming with malice. "Well, well," he drawled, stepping inside. "Look who finally woke up." Lily instinctively backed away, pressing herself against the wall as if it could shield her from him. "What do you want, Ryan?" He chuckled, shaking his head as though amused by her defiance. "Oh, Lily, still playing the victim, I see. You know, Victor doesn't take kindly to traitors or runaways." "I didn't ask for this," she snapped, her voice rising despite her fear. "You think I wanted any of this? To be hunted, experimented on, used as some kind of weapon?" Ryan's expression darkened, his amusement fading into something colder. "Maybe not. But choices have consequences, sweetheart. And running out on me, that had consequences too." His words struck a nerve, dredging up memories she'd tried so hard to bury. The nights spent cowering in their apartment, the bruises hidden beneath long sleeves, the promises she'd made under duress. Promises she now knew meant nothing. She clenched her fists, fighting back tears that threatened to expose her vulnerability. "You don't get to judge me," she said, her voice trembling but defiant. "Not after everything you've done." Ryan's lips curled into a sneer, and he took a step closer, invading her space. "You belong to me, Lily. Always have. Always will." Before she could respond, a commotion erupted outside the cell. Shouts echoed down the corridor, followed by the unmistakable clash of combat. A moment later, Callan appeared in the doorway, his chest heaving, his knife slick with blood. Relief flooded Lily's chest at the sight of him, but it was short-lived. "Get away from her," Callan growled, leveling the blade at Ryan. His voice was low and lethal, leaving no room for argument. Ryan raised his hands mockingly, backing toward the exit. "Easy there, Drake. Wouldn't want to ruin your hero moment." Callan lunged forward, grabbing Ryan by the collar and slamming him against the wall. Rage burned in his gray eyes, raw and untamed. For a fleeting second, Lily thought he might kill him, and part of her wanted him to. But then something shifted in Callan's expression, a flicker of clarity breaking through the storm. "No," he muttered, releasing Ryan abruptly. "You're not worth it." Ryan staggered back, surprise flashing across his face before it hardened into a scowl. "Your mistake," he spat, retreating into the shadows. Callan didn't waste another second. He crossed the room, pulling Lily into a tight embrace. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. She nodded, though her body betrayed her with a shiver. "I'm fine. What about the others?" "They're alive," he said grimly, "but we need to move. Now." Rescuing their allies proved easier said than done. Victor's fortress was a labyrinth of traps and ambushes, each corner hiding new dangers. They fought their way through corridors lined with containment cells, freeing prisoners and gathering intel along the way. Naomi limped beside them, clutching a makeshift crutch, while Marcus bore fresh wounds but refused to slow down. "We don't have much time," Naomi warned, consulting her tablet as they moved. "Victor plans to activate the plague within hours. If we don't stop him—" "We will," Callan interrupted, his tone leaving no room for doubt. "We're not dying here." Despite his bravado, tension simmered beneath the surface. Every encounter brought them closer to the truth and further from escape. By the time they reached the central chamber, exhaustion weighed heavily on all of them, their bodies battered but their resolve unbroken. Inside, Victor Kane awaited them, standing atop a platform surrounded by monitors displaying countdown timers and viral activation sequences. Below him, cages held dozens of werewolves, some transformed, others clinging desperately to their humanity. Among them was Dr. Evelyn Cross, her face pale with terror as guards restrained her. "So predictable," Victor mused, his voice smooth and mocking. "You humans always think you can fight destiny. But let me assure you, it's already been decided." Callan stepped forward, his knife raised. "You're done, Victor. Let them go." Victor chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, Callan, always the hero. But heroes die just like everyone else." With a snap of his fingers, the door sealed shut behind them, trapping the group inside. Before anyone could react, Ryan emerged from the shadows once more, dragging Lily with him. Her struggles were futile against his grip, his claws digging into her arm as he forced her to her knees before Victor. "This is where it ends," Victor declared, raising a syringe filled with glowing liquid. "With your blood, I'll reshape the world and you'll watch it burn." Callan lunged forward, but Ryan tightened his hold, pressing his claws dangerously close to Lily's throat. "One more step and she dies." Time seemed to freeze, the weight of the moment crushing them all. Lily locked eyes with Callan, silently pleading with him to act, to save himself, to save the others. But his gaze never wavered, burning with determination even as despair clawed at its edges. "I'll find you," he vowed, his voice barely audible. "No matter what." As Victor plunged the syringe into Lily's arm, extracting her blood, her vision blurred, her strength fading. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Callan charging toward her, shouting her name. But it was too late. The fortress erupted into chaos as Callan led the charge, his allies fighting alongside him with desperate fury. Gunfire echoed through the corridors, blending with the guttural snarls of werewolves and the clash of steel on steel. Every step forward was a battle, every breath stolen by the suffocating weight of urgency. They were running out of time, and they all knew it. Callan moved like a storm, his knife flashing in the dim light as he cut down anyone who stood in his way. His jaw was clenched so tightly it ached, his body driven by one singular purpose: reaching Lily before Victor could unleash the plague. Behind him, Marcus and Naomi fought fiercely, their movements coordinated despite their injuries. The group had been fractured, scattered, but now they were united, bound together by the knowledge that failure meant annihilation. Finally, they reached the central chamber where Victor held Lily captive. The room was vast, its walls lined with monitors displaying countdown timers, ticking closer to zero. Cages filled with writhing werewolves surrounded them, their anguished cries adding to the cacophony of despair. At the center of it all stood Victor Kane, his golden eyes gleaming with triumph as he held up a vial of glowing crimson liquid, Lily's blood. "Brave effort," Victor sneered, raising his voice to be heard over the din, "but bravery won't save you." Callan stepped forward, his blade raised, his expression unreadable, but his eyes blazing with hatred. "Let her go, Victor. This ends now." Victor laughed, low and menacing. "Oh, how noble. But tell me, Callan, do you truly believe she's worth saving? Look at her." He gestured toward Lily, who knelt on the platform, her head bowed, her breathing shallow. "She's weak, afraid, a pawn in a game far greater than she'll ever understand." "No," Lily whispered, lifting her gaze to meet Victor's. Her voice was soft but steady, cutting through the tension like a blade. "You're wrong." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Victor's face, but only for a moment. Then he smirked, tossing the vial casually from hand to hand. "Prove me wrong, then." As Victor turned his back, dismissing her as inconsequential, something inside Lily snapped. The fear that had paralyzed her for so long, the doubt, the guilt, it all crystallized into something else. Rage. Pure, unrelenting rage. She felt it coursing through her veins, burning away everything else until there was nothing left but fire. Her claws extended fully, her golden eyes blazing brighter than ever before. With a roar that shook the very foundations of the fortress, she lunged at Victor, tackling him to the ground. The vial slipped from his grasp, shattering against the floor, its contents spilling harmlessly onto the cold metal. Victor recovered quickly, his own transformation overtaking him as he morphed into a monstrous hybrid of man and beast. He swiped at Lily with razor-sharp claws, forcing her to dodge just in time. Their fight was brutal, primal. A clash of wills played out in flashes of teeth and claws. Each blow landed with bone-crushing force, yet neither gave an inch. From the sidelines, Callan watched, torn between intervening and letting Lily fight her own battle. This was hers to win, or lose. But when Victor landed a devastating strike that sent Lily crashing into a nearby console, Callan couldn't stay silent any longer. "Get up!" he shouted, his voice raw with desperation. "You're stronger than him, Lily. Show him what you're made of." His words ignited something deep within her. Pushing past the pain, she rose to her feet, her body trembling with the effort. For a moment, she hesitated, staring at her reflection in a shattered monitor. What stared back wasn't human, not entirely, and maybe it never would be again. But that didn't matter. What mattered was the choice she made next. With a final, feral cry, Lily embraced her inner wolf completely. Power surged through her, raw and untamed, as her transformation reached its peak. Her muscles rippled beneath her skin, her claws elongating, her senses sharpening to razor precision. When she turned back to Victor, it was no longer fear or doubt that fueled her, but resolve. The battle that followed was nothing short of savage. Victor fought with the ferocity of a cornered predator, but Lily matched him blow for blow, her newfound strength giving her the edge she needed. Finally, with a desperate lunge, she sank her claws into his chest, pinning him to the ground. His golden eyes widened in shock as life drained from them, his monstrous form collapsing into stillness. While Lily faced Victor, Callan confronted Dr. Evelyn Cross. She stood trembling near the control panel, her hands raised in surrender as he advanced on her, his knife gleaming ominously in the dim light. "You betrayed us," he growled, his voice shaking with barely contained fury. "You helped create this nightmare." "I was trying to protect humanity," Evelyn cried, tears streaming down her face. "To control the uncontrollable. You don't understand what I've sacrificed." Callan hesitated, the knife trembling in his grip. Images of his parents' deaths flashed before his eyes, fueling his hatred, but also reminding him of the cost of vengeance. Slowly, he lowered the weapon, exhaling sharply. "You're not worth it," he muttered, turning away. "But you'll answer for what you've done." Before Evelyn could respond, alarms blared throughout the fortress, warning lights bathing the room in crimson. The structure groaned ominously, its supports compromised by the earlier explosion. "The place is coming down," Naomi shouted, grabbing Marcus and pulling him toward the exit. "We need to move." Callan sprinted toward Lily, who was already making her way toward him, her golden eyes dimming slightly as exhaustion set in. Together they ran, dodging falling debris and leaping over shattered consoles. Behind them, the fortress collapsed in on itself, the sound deafening as steel beams buckled and walls crumbled. They barely made it outside before the entire structure imploded, sending a shockwave rippling through the surrounding forest. Gasping for air, they collapsed onto the damp earth, their bodies trembling with exertion and relief. As they caught their breath, Lily glanced down at her hands, still clawed and covered in blood, not all of it Victor's. Her heart sank as reality crashed over her. "What have I become?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Callan reached for her, but she pulled away, tears streaming down her face. I'm not I'm not human anymore. The forest was eerily quiet after the destruction of Victor's fortress, as though nature itself held its breath in the aftermath. The group huddled together on the outskirts of the ruins, their bodies battered but alive, their spirits bruised yet unbroken. Smoke curled into the night sky, a grim reminder of the battle they'd just survived and the lives lost along the way. Lily sat apart from the others, her knees drawn to her chest, her golden eyes reflecting the flickering glow of the distant flames. She stared at her hands again, now human once more, though faint scars remained, a permanent reminder of what she'd become. Her mind raced with questions she couldn't silence. Was she still herself? Or had the wolf claimed too much? Callan approached cautiously, his boots crunching softly against the damp earth. He knelt beside her, close enough to offer comfort, but far enough to respect her space. For a moment, neither spoke. The weight of everything unsaid hung heavy between them. "You saved us," Callan said finally, his voice low and steady. "You stopped him." Lily shook her head, her fingers tightening around her knees. "At what cost? Look at me, Callan. I'm not who I used to be." "No," he agreed, his tone firm but gentle. "You're stronger, braver. You faced something most people wouldn't have survived, and you didn't lose yourself in the process." She glanced at him, tears shimmering in her hazel eyes. "But how do I know that? How do I know I won't hurt you if I can't control it?" Callan reached out, placing a hand over hers. His touch was warm, grounding, pulling her back from the edge of despair. "Because I've seen you fight, not just with your claws, but with your heart. That's who you are, Lily. Not the monster Victor tried to make you. You." Her breath hitched, and for the first time since the battle, she allowed herself to believe him. It wasn't perfect, it might never be, but maybe balance was possible. Maybe she could find a way to live with both halves of herself instead of fearing one. Meanwhile, Naomi worked tirelessly on her laptop, decrypting files salvaged from the fortress before its collapse. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, her expression grim but determined. Finally, she looked up, addressing the group gathered around her. "The rogue faction is dismantled," she announced, her voice tinged with relief. "Victor's network is gone, and the labs responsible for creating artificial werewolves have been exposed. The government shut them down within hours of receiving my intel." Marcus let out a low whistle, leaning back against a tree trunk. "Guess that means we actually pulled it off." "Don't celebrate too soon," Naomi warned, closing her laptop with a snap. "There are still plenty of people out there who think werewolves are monsters, and they won't stop hunting us just because Victor's dead." Callan nodded, his jaw tightening. "Then we'll keep fighting, but not like before." He turned to face the group, his gray eyes blazing with conviction. "We can't keep blaming each other for what happened. Humans and werewolves, they don't have to be enemies. If we work together, maybe we can build something better." His words lingered in the air, resonating deeply with everyone present. Even Marcus, who had spent years harboring resentment toward humanity, seemed to soften slightly, nodding in reluctant agreement. Underscore, 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 underscore. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Callan and Lily stood side by side beneath the towering trees. The world felt different now, fragile, uncertain, but also full of possibility. They watched as the others began packing up, preparing to move on to whatever came next. "I don't know what tomorrow will bring," Lily admitted softly, her gaze fixed on the rising sun. "But I'm ready to face it with you." Callan smiled faintly, reaching for her hand. "Then we'll face it together." For a moment, they simply stood there, letting the quiet strength of their bond anchor them amidst the chaos. Neither knew what challenges lay ahead, whether peace would hold or tensions would rise again, but they were no longer afraid of the unknown. In the distance, the faint hum of engines echoed through the forest. A black SUV rolled to a stop at the edge of the clearing, its windows tinted and its occupants unseen. From inside, a figure stepped out, Dr. Evelyn Cross, her expression unreadable but her intentions clear. She raised a microphone to her lips, her voice cold and calculating. "This isn't over," she whispered, her words carried away by the wind. And as the vehicle disappeared into the trees, Callan and Lily exchanged a glance, silently acknowledging the truth. Their fight was far from finished.